All right, I'm going to start up, and let me just start by saying two things. First, somehow, and I'm sure it's on me, my team's calendar got totally screwed up. And instead of having it set up for one meeting per day, it had it set up for two. So I removed everything on my calendar and reset it again. Now, why am I telling you that? Well, I believe that it generated all new URLs that it sends out to you guys. So there is a chance that we might have people joining at odd times just because of the fact that, I don't know. I mean, I wish I knew Teams better than I know it. It's been a learning experience for all of us. So just so you know that. All right. So that said then, I want to ask, there's my calendar now. Do you see on the screen where I'm highlighting where it says questions from last period? Do you see that?
No, right now, I show, it just shows your initials on the screen. It doesn't look like I'm seeing anything on your end as well.
All righty. How about now?
Yeah, still just the initials.
Okie dokie. Let's see. Station. Actions. Captions, apply background effects. I don't want any of that. This is lovely. We'll get it to work, but it'll take a couple of minutes. Okay. All right. Show participants. Show conversations. I don't need that. Don't need that. Don't need that. Add app devices. Call health meeting options. I don't want any of that. Full screen. Stop recording from checked. Alrighty. Should be able to turn that off. So what do you see right now on the screen?
Right now, it's still just showing your initials. Now I see Jeremiah's initials as well.
Okay, so you see you and me and Jeremiah.
Uh-huh.
All right. All righty. Did it change now?
It did push Jeremiah's initials off to the side, and yours are centered now, but it still just shows your initials.
Well, that's real good, is it? So let's see. Wasn't Spotlight. Now, the last 2 days, everything has come on just fine. But today, of course, it's not. So we're going to get it, but let's see there. That should be it. The share content screen. How about now?
There it is. Yep, I see.
Okay.
Yeah, the schedule. Right. That's what it's looking at now.
Okay, great. So, and Jeremiah, I'm not sure if you've ever gotten your mic to work or not, but I'm hoping that you're there as well. And I started out today by saying two things, or one of two things. I'm going to repeat them both anyway. The first is I had to reset my my Microsoft Teams calendar. So the way, it probably won't affect any of you, but it affected me greatly. And literally what happened was since I changed the calendar around, it canceled 80 sessions and then it added 80 sessions. And unfortunately, each time it does that, it sends me a different email. So I got 160 emails on this yesterday. So that was kind of fun to sift through, but it should be set now. That's the first thing. The second thing, I have had, I think I put this in an email the other day, but I have had a couple people who are working full-time who are watching the tapes. And a couple in particular have said, hey, you know, the first tape was 3 hours and 14 minutes and 16 seconds long. And the second one was 3 hours and 14 minutes and 14 minutes long. It's like, are they all going to be this long? And the answer is no. All right. At the beginning of the semester, when we start to go through things, most people at least are not familiar with the basics of the language. So the idea behind these first 3 chapters is to just get us up and running. All right. Now, why am I even telling you that? Well, like I said, I don't want people to think that it's going to be me talking here for 3 to 3.5 hours a day. That's not the way it's going to work. All right. So just like I said, just so you're aware of that. And finally, going along with that, if you have any questions about how things are working or if things are not working, be they procedural in nature, something where, hey, I don't know where to go for this, I don't know where to go for that, etc., let me know. All right. What I plan on doing today is what's shown on the screen. So in just a minute, I'll ask if there were any questions from the last period. We're going to skip this until the end of the period, so don't worry about that. Then we're going to do that review exercise that I mentioned to you. Then we're going to go back and we're going to redo chapter 2. Now, why and how? Well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time reviewing. However, in chapter 2, and hopefully you can see this picture on the screen right now where it says the invoice total form, that's what they create in the Muroc book. They walk you through everything. All right. Now, to me, it would be a waste of my time and a waste of your time for me to rebuild this and follow every single step that's in the Muroc book. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this from scratch twice. I'm first going to build this thing that you see right here, and I'm going to build it as a console application. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to rebuild it as a GUI application. And I'm not lying to you when I say, I just looked at this morning. I have absolutely no code written. So I'm going to do it all off the top of my head. The reason I'm telling you that is there's a chance I'll screw something up, never on purpose, but hey, I like to think at least. I'm human. All right. So with all that said, what we'll do then is, like I said, that's how we'll do the review of chapter 2. Then we will go over, there's really not any new material in chapter 3. And what I mean is a lot, if not most, of the material in chapter 3 is stuff we've already gone over because I'm kind of jumping around as we're inside of Visual Studio to show you different things. So it probably isn't going to take that long to go over that. All right. Then once we get to that point where I've got here, write several programs, one or more console, one or more GUI, we're going to go and we're going to take a look at the homework. All right. And maybe we'll even do one, if not more, of the homeworks together, so you know what's going on. Finally, as always, we'll review. And then I'll explain to you what we'll be doing Monday and what we'll be going over next week as well. So to start with, does anybody have any questions from last period? Is there anything that we went over that doesn't make sense? All right, you have questions on, etc. Now, what I'm going to do real quick first is I'm going to jump back into here and I'm going to go into here. And it says, hi, is there still a meeting? Because I'm not seeing one. See, that's the problem. All right. And John was sent the link, so I have to see. If you hold on for just a second, please. And that, like I said, this is a thing that's going to keep happening, unfortunately. So I've got to do this. I've got to jump into Teams again. I don't want to leave this if I can help it, so I will start up another Teams session here. All right, in my calendar, that's today. And as it says, he was invited today, so I don't know why he's not able to see this. Oh, boy. Status is set to do not disturb, chats, files, details, meeting notes, whiteboard.
I don't know if it'll help anybody, but this is kind of the issue that I was having the first 2 days of class. And when I would go to the calendar for Microsoft Teams, I was able to, I think I was clicking on a bad link before. But when you go to the calendar, you can kind of see what meeting is actually active at the moment. So I don't know if that'll help him, but that is how I was able to get it.
I will tell him that. Thank you. Also, going along with that, if you see this screen, you might want to just click the join button, period, regardless of where you are, because it should be set when you bring up Microsoft Teams, it should be set up to the current day. So if you click join, it should get you in. All right. But thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm going to quickly send him an email and I'm going to tell him that. Is this what you're saying, Michael? Can you see me typing this in?
Yes, I can. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, it was just for whatever reason when I clicked the link from the email that was sent out, it wasn't pulling up the correct meeting. So yeah, I went to the calendar and from there I was able to manually just click on the meeting and join that way.
Okay, thank you. All right, so hopefully he will be joining us while we're waiting. Again, I guess Jeremiah, again, I don't know if you have your microphone working yet or not, but Michael, any questions that you had from yesterday?
No, not on my end. It was perfect.
All right, I'm going to wait for a second and hopefully we're going to get John Stark back in here. I will mention, I think I emailed you this morning, and that is, I mentioned this article yesterday that I just got sent this. 9 free C# courses and tutorials for beginners and intermediate programmers, where this person has gone through, Javan Paul, it looks like, and gave what he or she considers to be the best of the lot. Now, I sent you the link, and with most of the classes that are in here, there are even previews. Okay, I mean, sometimes people say, I learn better by doing this, I learn better by doing that. I know that, for years, the only way that I first started teaching, the basic way people learn was by reading. And now it's, most people are more visual learners. So, again, it's just another thing that you can check out, and hopefully that'll help. All right. So I'm not hearing anything back from John right now, which is not a great sign, but I'm hoping that I will soon. Again, as always, this is being taped. Yesterday, since I moved everything, what I should have done is I should have taken the Teams recording that I made, and I should have made sure it was saved before I changed the calendar, because somehow it deleted it. All right, but I did save it through Camtasia, so any of you who are watching this, you can go out to my YouTube channel, and I'll show you that again before the end of class. So what I'd like to have us do as we get started, and hopefully, like I said, we'll have more people joining us, is this was the thing that I had gone in and created for you, if you remember, as a console application. All right. So I'd like you to take that and try, I'll leave that up there. I'd like you to try to create that as a GUI application. Now, if you say, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, then if nothing else, rough it out. And even if you just sketch it out on a piece of paper on what you want it to look like, what the variables would be, or put it on your screen in a Word file or a Notepad file or whatever. So I'm going to give you, it's 8:20, and I'm going to give you literally about, let's say 25 minutes. I'll leave this up here, so if people join, I'll be able to talk to them. And if you're working on this and you have any questions or any problems with anything, just ask, because I'll be here. All right? I want to try to bring up a different file for my other class, but other than that, I'm going to be right here. All right? Hopefully you both understand that, and I'll start up again with you, and I'll build this with you from scratch at 8:45.
itself is committed to being 100% plastic-free by 2020.
Mr. Scott, I'm a little confused.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to redesign these forms. So I set one yesterday for the taxes GUI program for this one. And it's just showing the code whenever I go to the designer. Same for the one that we built yesterday together, the payroll GUI app. Is there some kind of view that I can go to that it will show the form by default instead of having to run the program to get it to come up?
Okay. What should happen, I'm going to bring mine up. And the taxes console was the one that it's not showing right now, but it will in just a second. It's loading. Should be showing, so let's see. Taxes GUI, there we go. So what is going on here? Let's close these. When you open up your project like this, what is supposed to happen? If you say it's not, I believe you. But when you open it up like this and you've got form1.cs and you double click on it, it should bring up the form. Now, if you right mouse click on it, you get into code mode. All right, but you can notice here, you're in both. See what I'm saying? Now, if it's only showing the code, so if you're only seeing this, but if you come over here and you double click on the name of your form, I haven't changed it yet, so it's still form1.cs. It should then bring it up in design mode. Am I answering what you're asking?
I basically made a template, just a blank form like that yesterday just to be prepared for today.
Okay.
And so that would be probably I would have renamed it formtaxes.cs.
Which is fine. you know, and I'm gonna rename mine in a little bit, but I'm gonna do it when we get started. All right. But
Yeah, when I
if you
double
can
click
find it,
that,
if you can find it in there under your taxes GUI and you double click on it, that's what it should bring up.
yeah, it's not, yeah, it's weird. It's just showing me a few lines of code and shows the namespace and yeah, just some.
Now, are you sure when you made that a Windows form? Because if you made it a console, that's what it's going to do.
That is possible, but the confusing thing is that the form from yesterday that we did together, mine was working, looked just like yours, except for it was green. And now
Okay.
that's not pulling up either. When I go to the designer, it just shows a bunch of lines of code.
What I'd suggest, just as a stopgap type of thing, is go in and try to create a brand new project.
Okay.
I mean, I've never heard of that happening. I totally believe you, but I don't know what would cause that to happen. And if you want, just literally shut down that instance, save everything, and shut down that instance of Visual Studio, period. Start up a new one, and even just create a new solution and see if you have the same problem. But when you go through it, you know, again, you said, you know, that you had problems with the stuff yesterday, but when you go through it, just make sure you're doing a Windows form and see if indeed it comes up, you know, that way. What you're saying makes sense to me, but I've never heard of that happening.
Okay.
Yeah. Michael, did you try what I said and did it work?
Yeah, I must have been looking at it in a weird view or something at my solutions. I honestly I don't know what I did, but I did fix it.
Okay, hey, that's the most important thing, is
Absolutely. So we're good.
I'm just got. All right, I was able to get in.
you got in. John, is that you?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna actually send that link to everybody who is in the class. I apologize for this, so I'm glad you're in. Thanks. That would be, I'll grab all these. Copy them. Shane, Jonathan, Michael doesn't need it. Jeremiah doesn't need it. Mason needs it. John doesn't need it. 3, 4, 5. And John, just so you know, what we're doing is I'm giving people a few minutes to try to recreate the project that I did yesterday, the console version of that buying something app, and I'll put it back up there as soon as I send this out. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So what we were doing is we were working on this. All right. And they've been working on it for a while. So what I'm going to do in just a few minutes is just build this from scratch. All right. So I'm going to start up in just a second, but before I do, again, yesterday, somehow my Microsoft Teams calendar got compromised. And what I mean is it was not displaying correctly on my end. I tried fixing it in multiple ways, and I even brought over a friend who's more of a Teams expert than I am, and we couldn't get it to work. So he suggested that I just remove everything from it and recreate it. When I did that, evidently, there may have been a problem linking to some of you. I put all of you in there. Everybody who's in the class is in there. Now, and John, I really appreciate you emailing me like you did, because with any of you, anybody watching this video, if you have a problem getting in, just let me know immediately. That's why I'm keeping an email window open. So I asked if there were any questions from last time. There weren't any. And John, if you do have any, feel free to ask. But we're doing this review exercise right now, where we are recreating this thing that we originally created as a console application, and we're going to recreate it as a GUI app. Once we get done with that, I'm going to do some review of chapter 2. All right. And rather than just sitting there and going over the PowerPoint again, which would be kind of a waste of time probably, and rather than going over the actual book stuff, in chapter 2, what Muroc does is they build this. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to rebuild that. So to review from chapter 1, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to rebuild it as a console app. All right, so I'll call it like Invoice Total Console. Then I'm going to go back and rebuild what they have here. Now, I'm not going to use their names. I'm not going to use anything from the book. I'm just going to do it off the top of my head. I do have the book here, but I don't want to do it that way. All right, so that's how we're going to go back and do at least a little bit of review before we go into chapter 3. Now, for chapter 3, believe it or not, there's not a lot of new stuff in there. All right, so it'll be some of it'll be a rehash, so to speak, of things I've already covered with you. And with whatever time is left, we'll go in and we're going to take a detailed look at the first homework that you have to do. All right. Okay. And, then we'll talk at the end about what we'll be going over next week. So what I'm going to do is I'm still throwing everything under this payroll thing because it really doesn't matter. All right. So I've got this will be my form. All right. Make it a little bigger. I have no idea how big it'll have to be, but that's
I got a quick question.
Sure.
Okay, so on the Windows form, can you
Mhm.
show how to make do the buttons again?
Yes.
Okay.
You're going to see me do all of it in just 1 second.
Okay.
Remember, when you're working with Windows Forms, you want to always come in and do the view if it's not showing and show your toolbox. All right, so mine is here. It's just not showing right now. So there it is.
Oh, no,
Right.
not the buttons. Like, yeah, I can do that, but like, I guess how do you do the commands?
Okay, I'll tell you what. If I miss anything, or if you're like, yeah, that's what I mean, then please stop me. Okay? All right. So what I want to do first is I'm just going to, if you right mouse click on this, you can go to view code. So I'm into my code window right now. I did this yesterday, but I didn't put anything in here. We'll probably need system and we'll probably need system forms. So I'm going to keep those both in here. All right. Then I'm going to put in a comment. And in this comment, what I'm doing is I'm adding all that stuff from yesterday. All right. So it doesn't look real nice. I'll pretty it up just a real little bit here because I don't want to waste a lot of time doing that. Now, you'll notice I get the asterisks here and I don't get them here. If I want an asterisk on each line, I've got to physically hit the enter key like that. All right. So if that bothers you one way or the other, you can do it that way. Okay. So, all right. So subtotal is going to be the price. This is going to be one of the formulas that we're going to have, for lack of better words, and it won't be written exactly like this. And this will be the other one. Now, if you look on the screen, because it's kind of an important concept, the way that we write this in computer code is actually the opposite of this, because what appears on the left-hand side of an equal sign, all right, is the where we want to put our final value. So what I really should say here is tax total, tax total equals subtotal times tax rate, semicolon, and in here it'll say final total equals subtotal plus tax total. And all I'm trying to show you is it's very important that we put the right thing on the right side of the screen and the right thing on the left side of the screen. If we did it the other way, the way I had it previously, all right, we're trying to take tax total, which may or may not even exist, and assign it to an expression, which doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. And, I've said this before, you may laugh, you may think, oh my gosh, but I've been married to my wife for many years. And I've often said that trying to argue with software in many ways is like arguing with my wife. Again, no joke. It doesn't matter if I'm right or not, because I'm probably going to lose the argument anyway. All right. And like, that's why I said, it really and truly does not matter if you're doing something in an incorrect manner. It doesn't matter how good your intentions or whatever are, your stuff isn't going to work. All right, so I'm just about finished here. I don't have asterisks everywhere. I just don't want to waste any more time doing that. So, all right. So the first thing is what we have to, what I want you to start getting in here in a mindset is, what are your inputs and what are your outputs? So we have here these inputs, and let's just use the names that we're actually going to use. So first name, last name, we'll just call it item, which is totally fine. Tax rate and price. All right, so those are the things that we're going to be inputting. So what that's going to mean is we will have to have a non-read-only text box for this, for this, for this, for this, and for this. And I'm hoping what I'm saying is making sense to all of you. All right. Now, why is that important? Well, I'm going to come across this and make this a little bit differently than I made the other ones. And what I mean is this. I'm going to come onto here. I'm going to add a single text box right now. And I double clicked on it to put it in there. I'm bringing it over. And now I'm moving it over here. All right. I'm not going to give it a name or anything because I want to make some copies of it. So I'm coming over here and I'm going up to my properties window. You saw me do this kind of thing yesterday, but I'm going to click on here and the writing is going to be very small. I want you to be able to see it. So I like to make it 16-point bold and Arial. And you can see it changes the size. So that's going to be our first name. I'm going to do it with this highlighted. I'm going to do a Control-C, Control-V. That's going to be our last name. Then another Control-V. That's going to be the item we bought. Then another Control-V. That'll be the price. All right. And one last Control-V. And that's going to be the tax rate. Now, we're not complete yet. There's still some stuff we have to add. But what I'm trying to show you is this stuff right here is going to end up being this stuff that's right here. All right. Now, I'm not even going to say, does that make sense? Because you might think, well, yeah, I never want to insult anyone's intelligence, but I also don't want to take anything for granted. All right. So we've got two more things we need, a taxable total and a final total. All right. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to copy this 2 more times. And there will be our taxable total. And there will be our final total. So that should be everything that we need for the program for our inputs and for our outputs. Now, these last 2 things, our taxable total and our final total, I'm going to make those read only. You'll notice that right now, I'm not worrying at all about colors and whatever. We can always go back and do that kind of stuff later. All right. But I've now got all this, so I'm going to come in here, and text box, you typically don't put any text in because that happens when the program runs. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to rename all of these. So the first one will be TXT first name. The next one will be TXT last name. The next one will be TXT item. And the next one will be, what am I missing here? So first, I've got first name, last name, item. I need tax rate and price. All right. So this one will be tax rate. And this one will be, put it in that order. Yep. This one will be price. All right. Okay. So let me put in that last one. All right. So now those all have names. So all of the input text, our input fields now have names. Well, we have our two output fields here. This will be our tax total. So I'm going to rename this TXT tax total. And this will be our final total. So I'm going to rename that TXT final total. All right. So those are all named. Again, I showed you this yesterday, but I can come up here right underneath my properties window where it shows what's currently there. I can click here and verify that indeed all of that stuff has been changed. I will change the form name in just a couple minutes, but that's all done now. All right. So what is left? Well, I want to come through here. I want to make this a little bigger because I want to put my buttons down there. Plus I need these labels here. All right. So I'm going to create a single label and do this very similar to the way that I just did it. And you might think, you know, I don't do it that way. And that's totally fine. You should do it the way that makes the most sense for you to do it. If watching me helps you and you want to do it the way I do it, great. If you come up and you go, no, I like to create all my labels first, then it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, and I've given this analogy before, it's like if I said to you, hey, tomorrow we're going to meet at the Rankin campus in St. Louis. We're not doing that. But if I said tomorrow we're going to meet there, and I said it doesn't matter where you live, you've got to get there driving these directions. That wouldn't make a lot of sense because we all live in different cities. We're all coming from different points. In the same way, the way that people come in and create their programs, it's never going to be the same. So I'm just showing you the way that I typically would do it. So for my label, I'm going to click on this and I'm going to immediately come in and where it says auto size, it now says true. I'm going to double click that. So it says false. And what did that do? Well, you can already see that what that did was that changed it. It changed its width and now I can make it bigger or smaller. So I'm first going to put this as LBL first name. And I'm going to put text in there that also says first name. Now, what I should have done is I really should have copied it a bunch of times first, but it's fine. All right, so I've got that. I'm again going to go over here and make it the same size I've made the other ones. And I'm hoping that's big enough that you can all see it from your machines. So there it is. All right, plus I want to come over here and do one last thing, and that is I want to come up and do the text align that right now is top left. I'm trying to move that thing and it's not letting me. All right, so I want it middle right. So there's that. All right, so I've got that now. So I'm going to copy and paste, and I'm going to end up pasting this 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever it is times. One thing I found in the past, tell you a very quick little story that happened to me, and this is not made up, this is not funny or anything. All right, years ago when I was teaching, and this is when we were using Visual Basic.net instead of Visual C# like we're using right now. But years ago, I was teaching in a class, and we were talking about interfaces. And I said, anyone can learn to build an interface. And actually you can learn it fairly quickly. I said, you know, if you gave me a monkey, I could probably teach the monkey to create an interface in a half an hour, and probably to create a good one, maybe as good as you would do, or maybe even better. Well, at the end of that class period, a student went up to the dean, who was my boss, and said, Mr. Scott just called all of us monkeys, which I never did. I was trying to prove a point, and he was actually quite upset with me. Why would I do something like that, etc.? So I said, I'll tell you what, I want you to come down and I want you to talk to my class tomorrow, because maybe there's other issues. So he walked down, and I introduced him, and I said, okay, I'm leaving now. Now you come in here and you say anything that you want to say. All right. And supposedly that person said it again, and everybody else said, no, he didn't. All I'm trying to tell you is I don't see your faces. You don't see my face. So if I'm saying something and it's not making sense, I don't ever want you to take it out of context. That's why if you have any questions, in my mind, in my opinion, in this class, there is no such thing as a dumb question. I'd rather have you ask something and say, oh, well, that's what I thought, but that's and know that, than sit there and assume something. And that's all I wanted to say about that. So, all right, so I'm coming in here. Now I've got first name and I've got last name. And what was next? This is the item. And I know this takes a little bit of time. All right, sorry about that, but that's just the way that it is. If there's a quicker way to do this than the way I'm doing it, I don't know of the way. There probably is, but I just don't know what it is. So after the item, we then have the tax rate. Wish I'd have put, I'm doing it in this order, but I probably would have put price and then tax rate, but it's okay. And I mentioned this earlier, but if you didn't hear it, whenever that goes off like that, I'm going to quickly jump back into my email and make sure that that isn't somebody else who's having a problem getting in. And if it's not, boom, I'll just, okay, no. Okay, good. All right, so I'll jump right back in. All right, so there's my tax rate. Next is the price. And again, I mentioned this yesterday, but I'm just going to say it again, and that is typically you don't have any predefined text inside of a text box. Virtually all the time, you'll either have text in here or you will have possibly even an image. All right, that's totally possible. All right, so the next one here is tax total. And the last one is final total. So before I go on, I've got a quick question for all of you, and that is, looking at this and then looking at what I just showed you in steps 1 and 2. Now we haven't put in the formulas yet, all right? But we've basically gone through and identified our inputs and we've identified our outputs. Does anyone have any questions on that? What I did, why I did it, etc. Is there anything there that doesn't make sense? All right.
I'm good.
What's that?
I said I'm all good.
Okay, good. All right. And then let's just continue on then. And I think hopefully then, John, I'm gonna be getting to your questions shortly. So I'm gonna add 3 buttons. So again, the way I typically like to add is to just take them and drag them out like I showed you. I don't know if that's too big, but it's totally fine. But again, I'm gonna come in here as I've been doing, and I'm gonna change the text size. And again, I'm doing that more for your benefit than I am for mine. I want to make sure you can all read it. So there will be my calculate button. There will be my clear button. And there will be my exit button. All right. You can see the program's coming together. It doesn't look fantastic, but it's totally okay. All right. So this first one here, I'm going to change the name to BTN calculate. And I'm going to change the text on there as well to calculate. The second one, I'm going to change the name on it to BTN clear. And I will change the text on the button to clear. Finally, the last one, I'll give it the text exit. And as we looked at yesterday, let's put in there E ampersand XIT, so it'll have the underscore there. We could do the same thing for clear and for calculate. We couldn't make both of those C. That doesn't make any sense to the system. So that one I might make C and that one I might make L if I wanted to do that. All right. And then finally, let's just change the name of this to BTN exit. All right. Now, before I go on, it's looking the way I want it to look. So I said this to you yesterday. All right. And I'm just going to hold down on the left mouse button and make this, it's called lassoing. I'm lassoing every control I have and I'm letting go. Then I'm going to right mouse click. It doesn't matter which control you choose. And I'm going to choose lock controls. Now my interface is locked into place. All right. So a couple more things and then we're going to take a 10-minute break. Okay. The first is I want to set 4 things before we take our break. The first is I'm going to click on the form. I'm going to go down right near the bottom. Why it's not letting me? There we go. And I want to find the start position. And I want to change that so it's center screen. So when the program runs, it'll be right in the center of the screen. You don't have to do that. You don't get any points for doing it on an assignment. I don't take any points away if you don't do it. I just like it to be centered on the screen. So that's the first thing I've done. Then the next thing I'm going to do is, this may be set correctly already, but I want my tab order for this to be 0. So when I first start, I want to make sure the cursor is right there. So that'll be 0 because many times in computer programming, you start counting at 0 instead of 1. So my tab order will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. These I don't want to give a tab order to now. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And even though I don't need them for labels, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that's the first thing I want to do. It's easiest if you put your cursor in where you want the 0 in the tab order to go. So my cursor's there, and I'm going to go in and do a view tab order, and there they are. Now, it almost is correct now, but that's okay. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, here's where it'll change. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And again, technically I don't have to do these, but I don't, since some of the numbers are duplicated now, I don't want to possibly confuse the system, so I'll do all of them. All right. These numbers stay on here until I do another view tab order. All right. So we built the interface. We dragged out our controls. We renamed our controls. We positioned our controls. We locked our controls. We set our start position to the center of the screen. All right. We set our tab order. And the last 2 things I want to do before we take a break is I'm going to click on click on an empty spot on the form right there. And I'm going to go to accept button, which is up near the top. And click the down arrow, and I'm going to choose BTN calculate. And then I'm going to go to the cancel button, click this, click the down arrow, and choose BTN clear. What that means, once again, is once I run the program, let's do a file save all and run it. All right. Now, right now, oops, I've got to reset my startup project. I always forget to do that. Sorry about that. So I'm going to right mouse click where it says Taxes GUI, right mouse click on there on that project name and choose Set as Startup Project. All right. and click again. That should bring it up now. And there it is. All right, now I can put stuff in here and in here and in here and in here and in here. None of the buttons work because we haven't put any code there yet. But clicking the calculate button will give us the same action as if I hit the enter key. Clicking the clear button will give us the same action as if I hit the escape key. All right. Any questions on any of that material right there? Anything? And Jeremiah, if your microphone isn't working, please feel free at any time to email me if you have questions. All right. Or I probably could open a chat over here, but if I do that, it takes up quite a bit of the screen. All right?
On the
Yes.
the exit, can you
Yes.
show how you get
The underscore?
yeah, the underscore.
Sure. All you have to do, in fact, let's do it with the other two. That'd be the easy, maybe an easier way to show you. So for the calculate, let's add a C. All you do is the letter that you want to have the underscore right before that letter, it can be uppercase or lowercase, put an ampersand in there. That's it. So you notice now calculate has it. For clear, I'll put an ampersand before the L in the word clear. You have to do that on your text. So now it's got all of them. Did that
Okay,
answer your
thank you.
question?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'm going to do a file save all, and it's 9:10. I'm going to set a timer right now for 10 minutes. We're going to take a 10-minute break. That's my granddaughter. All right, so we're going to take a 10-minute break right now. And we're going to pick it up again at 9:20. All right. I've got to run to my office for a minute, but I literally will be back in about 2 minutes. So if you've got a question or anything and you need to ask during the break, totally fine. All right, I'm going to start back up again, and I'm going to start up in kind of a strange way in that what I'm going to do is very quickly let you know, you probably could care less about what I'm going to say at the beginning, but it's okay. I'm originally from Wisconsin, and I would imagine here, I don't know what your legal driving age is, but in Wisconsin, ours is 16. So when I was 16, took driver's ed, did all the good stuff, and I was out driving with a friend of mine one day named Phil Russell. And Phil had actually taped something to his steering wheel that said, "Don't forget to turn off your lights." Now, that was back in the day. I know today we've got a lot of cars that turn them off automatically, but back then it didn't. And he said, a couple times I've done that and I've drained my battery, and that's why I do it. Reason I'm telling you that is I'm taping these things twice per day. And what I mean is I'm taping it through Teams and I'm taping it through Camtasia. Well, stupid me, I forgot to turn the Camtasia on this morning. So I'm hoping that the MP4 that gets created from Microsoft Teams will be fine today, and that's the one I will move that one out as well to YouTube. If for some reason it doesn't, I'm going to have to go back, and tonight at home I will retape the first hour of this lecture that you just heard and then put it back out there. All right. So I'm jumping back in here then, and this is where we left off, was right here. So as you'd guess, it's time to add the code. So we will want to add code here and think about what we want to do again. What we'll want to do here is we'll want to take whatever this price was, multiply it by the tax rate, and stick the result inside of that tax total. We'll also then want to take the price and add the tax total and put that result in our final total. All right, hopefully that all made sense. When we click clear, we'll want to clear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different text boxes. And then we'll want to put the focus right here. Finally, when we click exit, again, when we do exit, what they have been doing in the Muroc book is they usually just say close, which boom, that's final. But I gave you some code yesterday. I sent it to everybody, and I'm going to go grab it in just a minute. And that's the code that I'm going to use. All right, so there's going to be our calculate in just a minute, but I'm going to do these in reverse order. So there's our calculate, there's our clear, and there's our exit. So I'm going to put in the exit first today, and I've got to find that code. It'll take me just a second. I actually know where it is. So let's see, it's going to be down here. Exit button, there we go. So I'm going to put that code right in here. Now, I did go over this yesterday, but I'm going to say it again. I'm going to talk about it and demo it in just a second. But what is this doing? This is creating what's called a dialogue. All right. And a dialogue is just that. It's a kind of a means of conversation. And we're taking, and what we're doing is this. This is the action that we're doing. This is creating a box on our screen, and it's telling it to show that box. The title of that box will be exit now. The text inside of the box will be, do you really want to exit? It will have a button that says yes. It'll have a button that says no. And it'll have an icon in the upper left-hand corner that looks like a question mark. All right. So if we click the yes button, it's going to exit the application naturally. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save all. All right. And then I'm going to run the program. You already saw this from yesterday, but I'm going to try to move this over a bit. And I'm going to click the exit. So again, everything I just mentioned to you, this whole thing is a message box. The title of the message box is Exit Now. That title is what we put in here. The text for the message box, do you really want to exit, is there. The way that a message box is set up syntactically by the programming language, it'll be messagebox.show, then in parentheses, the message you want to show, the title for the box, and then there's other things you can put in. For instance, I put yes, no. Sometimes I'll only put in here .ok, because if I want to show somebody information, boom, they read it, just click OK and get out. So this can be changed. This can be yes, no. It can be OK, cancel, just OK, and a bunch of other stuff. This icon can change. So if I wanted to, I could change it. And instead of having it be a question mark, I could have it be I for information or whatever. Now, I can't change that now because my program's running. So I can't go in here. Actually, it is letting me change it. But typically, rather, it won't let me because I am in run mode right now. And that is designated by, you see the little red box, and the green thing that we use to run the program is now not there anymore. I'm in one of the 3 modes that you can be in when you're running a program. Design mode, which is what we were in before we ran the program. Run mode, which is what we're in right now, or sometimes it's called execute mode. And there's also a debug mode. I showed you that yesterday when I put over here, I put one of those breakpoints over here and it ran until it stopped. Then we were in debug mode. So again, we've got this message box up. If we click no, nothing will happen because we're not telling anything to happen. If we click yes, it should exit our application. And you'll notice it does. All right. So are there any questions on that code for the exit button? Any questions?
Yeah. So
Yes.
on the code, when I open my code, I don't see the private void button exit.
Private void. Oh, this right here?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you should see it if you double click on the actual button itself. Now, if you have not renamed the button,
Okay.
it'll probably.
I
Go ahead.
double clicked. I got it now.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right, so we've done this. We're a third of the way through. Now, again, we want to click clear, and we want to clear, and then we want to put the focus there. Now, the way that I showed you yesterday is the way I do it all the time, and that is I give the name of the text box, and I say equals double quote. Okay? You can, if you want to, also say string.empty. It does the same thing. And a natural question would be then why would you type all that when this does the same thing? And it's just that they gave you 2 ways of doing the same thing. I'm going to do it that way because I don't want to type any more than I have to. Now notice it automatically came up with last name.txt. That's the Intellisense coming in. And if I hit tab, boom, now I'm there. So again, double quote. All right. And then txt item.txt equals double quote. TXT, what was next? The order of which you do these again doesn't matter. So I'm going to do tax rate and price. Equals double quote. So the price. And again, that equals double quote. The TXT tax total. .text, that equals double quote. And the TXT final total. .text equals double quote. Now, this is totally fine the way it is. And I mentioned this to you yesterday, but I'm going to say it again anyway. Now I can go back if I want to and just line all these up. Now, I do it for 2 reasons. First of all, I've been told that I've got more of an anal personality, which isn't the greatest thing to say about somebody, but I'll take that. The other thing is it's much easier for me to look at this and see exactly what's going on. If you agree with that and you want to do it this way, fine. If you don't agree and you want to put it back to the way it was, also fine. So now I want to say txt first name dot, not dot text, but dot focus. And that will put the mouse, or the cursor, I should say, in that first field. So I'm going to run this, but first I'm going to do a file, save all. My question is there anything in this routine that does not make sense to anyone? You don't have to answer, but if I hear nothing, I'm going to assume that it makes sense. All right, let's test this. And again, I can put some junk in the the 5 text boxes that are all white. I can't put anything in here or in here because they're read-only fields. My exit button, yeah, it still works, but I'm going to click no. When I click clear now, these all should clear, and my cursor should go right there. I'm going to put it in here so you can see where it is. So I click clear, they've all cleared, and there's my blinking cursor. So that appears to work. So now we're 2/3 of the way through here. So what's left is to calculate. And the thing is, there's 3 things we have to do here. We have to multiply this by this and put the result here. So that's, all right, one thing. Then we have to add this to this and put it here. And hopefully what I just said makes sense. I didn't screw it up too badly. So here's the calculate. So let's put in here first, declare variables. So I'm just going to put a comment in here. You don't have to put in a comment, but I'm going to make them again. I'm going to make all of these of type decimal. So I'm going to have in here what? I'm going to need a price. So decimal, spell it right, decimal price. And I'll set that equal to 0.00. It'll give me an error until I put an M in there, meaning that it's a decimal. Because by default, it's going to assume it's a double, even though it's got the word decimal in there. That's why you need the M. So I'm going to have another decimal, and we'll call this, I'll use the same names I used here. You don't have to, but I'd like to anyway. So tax rate, price, tax total, and final total. All right. So this will be tax rate. And it's a decimal, so it'll be 0.00M. I'll need tax total, and that'll be set equal to 0.00M. And finally, I'll do a decimal final total. And I'll set that equal to 0.00M. All right, so I have now declared all my variables and I've initialized them. Now, one thing is, these 2 things really shouldn't have a value of 0. They should have the value of whatever is in here and whatever is in here converted to a decimal value. So it's totally fine to leave them the way that I have them and then go and add that over here, or I can do it, which to me is the easier, more intuitive way, and that is I'm going to change this so it says price equals convert dot to decimal txt price dot text. Let me put in the other one. Let me make it look a little nicer. Whoops, I want to make it that big. There we go. All right. So this will also be convert dot to decimal txt tax rate dot text. All right, and I don't want to do the other 2 because those are the ones we're calculating. So I'm going to move this over again just so it reads a little nicer, in my opinion. And we've got that. So again, what this line of code here is saying is take whatever is in this line in blue, says take whatever is in this text box right here. All right, take whatever is in there, attempt to convert it to a decimal value, and store the result into price. This does the same thing, but instead it grabs the value for the tax rate. So it's going to go into that one, grab its value and attempt to convert it to a decimal. As I showed you yesterday, all right, as I showed you yesterday, if I go in there and put in garbage values, the program will blow up. All right. Now that I've got these two set, what I can do is I can change this one as well. And what is this? It's price times tax rate. All right. And what's this one? It's really the price plus the tax total. Now, I am both declaring these variables like this and initializing these variables, which is this. If I do not know their values ahead of time, then what I can do if I want to or would like to do is I can just give them no value or just zeros like I did before, and then give them values later is what I'm telling you. All right. You should always get used to, in this language, initializing your variables. All of these have been initialized. All right. Now, again, this program is going to break if we run it and I come in here and in my tax rate, I leave it blank or I put in something non-numeric. It will not break if I put a really huge positive or a huge negative number, because we're not doing any data validation as of this time on our program. We will get to that in later chapters. All right. So we're just assuming for now the user has a clue as to what he or she is doing. So, whoops, what happened here? All right. So now what I want to do is, now that I have all these, is I want to put the tax total in here and the final total in here. All right. But unlike what we just did, here we're taking something that's in a value and we're assigning it to a variable. All right. Now we want to take the variable and we want to assign it to the associated text box. So when we are taking what's in a control or a widget or whatever you want to call this, typically in this language they're called controls. If you want to take the value of something and set it to a variable, then the control is on the right-hand side of the equal sign and the variable is on the left-hand side of the equal sign. But what we're going to do is the opposite. So yeah, I guess we can use this. So we want to say TXT, not price, but TXT tax total. In fact, we've done it already. We don't even have to do that. We're doing it right there. But what we want to do is we want to now take this tax total that's here and we want to put it in there. And then we want to take this final total that's here and we want to put it in there. These are the only two fields that we are going to format for $sign. And I'm going to show you, because I didn't mention it yesterday, but I'm going to show you in just a moment why we're doing it like that. All right. So I'm going to come in here and say TXT tax total dot text, and that's going to be set equal to our tax total. And since we want to format it, we'll do a .toString on there, and we'll format it to currency. In fact, that's our tax total. So we'll format that to currency. All right. Then we will do our TXT final total. All right. And that's going to be our final total also to currency. And you'll notice the Intellisense kicked in and it put it all in there for me, which is kind of nice. All right. The program should be complete right now. Now I'm going to add a few things to it in just a bit, but it should be complete. My question to you is that in the 6 lines of code that I put in here in lines 38 through 44, is there anything in the blue right now that does not make sense to any of you? Anything? And if I hear nothing, I'm going on. All right. So let's do one more file, save all. And when you're testing this, at least the first few times, Test it with something that's easy to figure out. So I'll put in my name. I'll center these in just a bit. So my last name, the item, I don't know. Let's say I'm going to buy an iPhone. Okay. So the tax rate, we're just going to say it's 10%, which is 0.1. The price, let's say, is $800. So if this works, all right, the tax total should be $800 times 1%. So that should be $80 there. And the final total should be $800 plus $80. So it should be $880. And you can see that it is. All right. Now, you might say, well, why didn't you make this? Why didn't you take what's in here and format it and make it a dollar, put a dollar sign there, etc. And why didn't you make this percent? The answer is I could have. I want you to know I could have. But not everybody who runs this program is going to always click the clear button. Somebody else might come in here and just say, oh, you know what? That was wrong. It was really $1,100. So now without changing anything except that number and clicking calculate again, it recalculates. If I've got this formatted to a dollar sign or this formatted with a percent sign or both, and I don't click clear, but I just change one of those values and I click calculate, the program will break. Because remember what it's doing in these two fields. It is doing a 2 decimal. 2 decimal will only accept numbers or a decimal place. Or a positive sign it'll probably take, or a negative sign. But other than that, it'll blow up. And that's why I'm doing it the way that I'm doing it. All right. So my clear looks like it works. I could start all over again. And it looks like my exit works as well. All right. Now, a couple more things. First, again, because I am this way. All right. So I could come down here, highlight all of these, come back into here, go down and find my text align. Now, in here, it's not going to do like it did for the labels where it shows the picture. In here, it actually, in the drop down, it shows left, center, and right. They aren't showing right now on my screen, at least. So I can also just double click on it, and now it'll be centered. So if I do a file, save all again, and run it, what you'll notice is it's now centered on the screen. They will all be centered. If you say, who cares, then don't do it. The important thing in here is that you're able to create a decent looking interface and you're able to put the correct code in so that when you click the corresponding button, the program works. You'll notice if I click calculate, it breaks. Why? It breaks when it gets down to the price. Why? Because that, and actually I would have thought it would have broken here on the tax rate, but it broke here. All right. And it doesn't know how to handle this. Okay. So a couple more things, and they aren't really that big of a thing, but just so you know this. Again, I may have mentioned this to you the other day. I don't remember if I did or not. And that is, I like to put what are typically called prologues before the name of each one of these routines. So code that runs when the calculate button is clicked. Now that makes the program, doesn't make the program work any better. And I will tell you, if you write too many comments, it actually slows down the amount of time it takes to run the program. Because the first thing the system does internally is it strips away all of the comments and all of the white space in here that it doesn't need. But I'm just doing this for my own edification here. So this will be the code that runs when the clear button is clicked. This will be the code that runs when the exit button is clicked. Now, tell you this and I'll try to make it real clear and real quick. Eventually what's going to happen in here is you are going to be taking these programs and setting them up so that I can grade them. All right, and the way you will do that is you will use a combination of Git and GitHub, where I'm pushing that off. I'm guaranteeing we're going to go over that on Monday. All right, but when the day comes when you graduate and you're trying to get a job, you will make your GitHub repository, which holds all your code, available to a prospective employer. If you've got a program, this is not a long program, it's not even 100 lines. But if you've got a program and that program is, let's just say, 1,000 lines long, and you have no comments in there, that might be what you're remembered for when a person looks at your code. So you want to do things like use good variable names, all right, and put comments in, where you have to, all right. Okay, that's pretty much it for this one. Again, anybody, before I go on, anybody have any last questions on this particular problem? Anything? All right, then let's go back, and I want to do two things right now. The first thing is I want to go back here. I don't think, I do have one email, so let's see. Nope, that's nothing. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to go back here, and in chapter 2, all right, it was on how to design a Windows Forms application. And I'm going to bop through this very quickly. All right. You should by now know how to create a new project. All right. You should now know how to configure your project. When I go through and redo the one that's here, which I'm going to do in a minute, you can watch me do it again if you want to. All right. But you should be able to do both of those. You should also have an understanding of the difference between a console program, which has no graphical user interface, and a GUI program, which does have a graphical user interface. All right. It's always a good idea, even if it's just on a piece of paper with using a pencil, to lay out ahead of time what you want this to look like. All right, and if you say, I don't want to do that, I can't make you do it. I don't know if you're doing it or not. But the more complex your form gets, the more that'll help you in the long run. All right, so you should now know that labels are used basically as headings. The text boxes are used to either allow the user to provide input or to show the user output. You should know that buttons are basically set up so that when you click them, you make an action happen in your program. All right. You should now know how you can add controls to a form. I showed you several ways. One way, again, was to just double click on the control in question in your toolbox, but that always puts it on your form designer in the upper left-hand corner. The way I use is to hold down on the left mouse button, drag it over. All right. And what I've been doing, since I want my interface to look, fairly decent, I guess. I don't think this looks bad. I mean, I can pretty it up. You all know this. I've shown you this already. So I can click on my form. I can go back to my back color because it is kind of ugly right now, and I can give it a color. Boom. All right. There, maybe it's a little bit easier to see. All right. I don't really care on that. This is that whole idea I told you before about anybody can build an interface. But programmers are paid not to build the interface as much as when they click the calculate button, the right stuff happens. When they click the clear button, the right stuff happens. And when they click the exit button, the right stuff happens. All right, so we're going to create this one in just a couple minutes. So we're going to do it first as a console app. Then we're going to go back and we're going to do it as a GUI app. Now, you should be starting to get used to the fact that down here is your properties window. And guess what? You now do actually know both ways of setting properties. What do I mean? Well, we set the name of the control, and for labels, for example, we set the text for the label and the text for the button right here in our properties window. On the other hand, when we came in here we are setting the value of controls. We are setting the text property, but we are setting it in code. With virtually any property, you set virtually any property, and I would go as far as to say, as far as I know, every property that you can set using your properties window here. Every property, as far as I know, every property that's here, you can set it in your properties window or you can set it in code. All right. Now, if it's something that's not going to change and you know what it is ahead of time, you'll typically want to set it in the properties window. If it's something that will change based on inputs, outputs, processing, then you want to set it in code. All right. And hopefully, again, what I'm saying makes sense. Please feel free to stop me if something does not. All right. So they showed you some of the common properties. We've already gone in and I showed you how to set the accept button. I showed you how to set the cancel button. I showed you how to set the start button. All right. I've shown you the read only. When we set our tabs, we were setting the tab index. All right. I don't ever deal with the tab stop property. All right. But you can go ahead and take a look at it if you want. And we did text align when I just centered the different text boxes, the text in there. The enabled, all that's going to do, if a control is there, but you don't want anyone to look at it, all right, or I'm sorry, be able to use it, you can set the enabled property. And just to show you that, I'll remove it right away. But what I'm going to do is when your program begins, all right, a lot of things happen in the background that you don't even know about, and I don't know about. But the form gets loaded into memory. And if I double click on the form, there's the form's load event. All right, now, I haven't renamed my form yet, so I don't want that to be called Form 1. So let's remove what I just put in there. I want to get rid of this. Remember, when you get rid of it like this, don't highlight it and hit delete. Do not do that. Because when I just put this in, it added a line to my form designer. Somewhere in here, it now has in my form's load event. And it's going to have something in there, and it could get screwed up. All right. So what I do instead is I go back in here into my design window. I click, it's because it's the form. Now I want to change from this one that says properties to the one next to it that looks like a lightning bolt that says events. And what I want to do is in the load event right now, and hard to see, so let me move this over. It is calling form 1 load. I highlight that, I hit delete, I get off of that, and you'll notice that now, when I go back and I view the code, it's not there anymore. All right. So what I want to do, and I really should have done this first, but I didn't, is I'm going to click on the form. I'm going to right mouse click on here where it says form1.cs. I'm going to choose rename. And I'm going to change the name to FRM. What did we call this? Just like, I'm just going to call it taxes. It's a dumb name for this, but it's fine. And I'm going to hit enter. And it comes back and it says, would you like to rename everything? Virtually 100% of the time, you're going to click yes. So now that's been changed. All right. Again, I can always come down here and make sure that everything has been named. All right. I'm going to have to come over here. Now I should be able to do it. There they all are. All right. The other thing I didn't do, because this says form 1, is I can come back here. I'm going to go back, change this back from events to properties. And I'm going to come back here and click on my form and go back to the text and say, this is a simple program. But this is just a simple C# graphical user interface or GUI program, and hit enter, and now that's changed. I know that's kind of hard for you to see. All right, so all that stuff is done. All right, jumping back into our book then. As far as navigating, all right, it says how to adjust the tab order. I've already shown you that. How to set the access keys. Mr. Stark asked about that one, so I think it was him, and if it wasn't, sorry. But I showed you how to do that. All right, how to set enter and escape. That's the accept and cancel. We've done that. Now it says in chapter 10, you'll learn about tab order. I showed it to you now because the way they show it to you, you can always set it in code, but that's silly. I showed you the easiest way. I'm trying to show you things, and the things I'm showing you, I'm trying to show you them in the most intuitive way possible. So you're just learning this, and if, Sometimes there's going to be 5 or 6 ways to do something. And if there are 5 or 6 ways, I'll probably show you a couple of them. And, you might, read a book, an article, or try something and say, hey, I can do it this way too. Typically, not always, but typically I know that as well. But I'd rather show you 2 easier ways of doing something than a really hard way of doing something. All right. So, all right. So these, when they have you build that thing, this thing here, which I'm going to build in just, very shortly, they show you at the end here what to call everything. And I think I mentioned this to you earlier, but what they typically do, what Muroc typically does, is they do rename the form, they do rename text boxes, they do rename buttons, but they don't rename labels. And the reason they don't typically rename labels is normally it's going to be very, 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 very remotely that you will ever put code in for a label. And that's why they do it that way. I just do it because to me it makes more sense when I'm looking at this thing in here and I'm looking at everything to be able to see exactly what goes with what. And I always give my labels and my text boxes the same name. Again, you don't have to do that, but this is LBL first name, this is TXT first name. It makes it easier for me to comprehend everything I'm doing. If you agree, feel free to do it that way. If you don't. All right? Okay. So they have you build this and they give you, it says how to rename the files. Well, I showed you already how to rename the form, how to save the files. You know how to do that already. We talked about the Solution Explorer. There may be a couple things in there that I didn't go over already. I don't think there are, but it's possible. And that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in fact, I should have time. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to build the console version of this application. Then we'll take another break and I'll come back and I will build the GUI form of this. All right. So I'm just going to keep working in the payroll that I'm in. Are there any questions on this material in chapter 2 that I just went over? Any questions that anybody has on anything? All right, then not hearing anything, I'm going to try again to build this as a console app. So I might be bouncing back to this once in a while. In fact, I'm just going to go and give myself a little cheat sheet here, just so I know it all. That, I know everything that's going in here. So I'm going to have what? I'm going to have LB, I'm going to have I'll just do it like this. Subtotal, discount percent, discount amount, total, and I'm going to have a button that says calculate. I'm going to have another one that they don't have, but we'll add with clear and exit. So that will end up being my interface in just a moment. Now, since I'm doing it console, I shouldn't have said interface. We won't have one. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create this app right now. So let's go back into here. I am going to close this so it looks like that. I'm going to go up to my solution. All right. And what did they call this? I think it was invoice total. So I'm going to call the first one invoice total console, and the second one I'll call invoice total GUI. All right. So I'm going to click on the solution one time, then right mouse click on it, choose add new project. And again, I'll come up here and I'll type in console. And I'm going to choose console app, .NET Framework, C#. I'm going to, as I mentioned, I'll call this invoice total console. Oops. Right? And click create. And there it is. All right. You already know this stuff. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to leave the using system and I'm going to add my using static system.console because it's a shortcut. You don't have to do that. All right. I'm not going to put really any comments in here, just so you know. The comments are all in the book. But to make it a little easier for me, I'm going to grab what I had in here before. All right. And I'm just going to paste it in. Now, it's going to give me an error when I do that, or probably a bunch of errors, and that's okay. Because I'm going to get rid of this in just very momentarily anyway. But I'm going to highlight all of it. And if you remember, we've got our shortcut here where we can come over here and where is it? I guess it's over here. Well, what should be here? Again, for some reason, the stuff that should be here is not showing. So let's look. Let's look here and debug, build, whatever. I don't remember which one it's in. I'm going to try layout, but I don't think it is that one. All right, I'll just manually add them. That's fine. So I'll do a slash star and hit enter. And then for the last one, I'll put in star slash. So that's what I'm going to have in here. So what do I need? Well, I'm going to have a string that's going to hold what? What do we have? Subtotal. Let me look at this one last time, please. In fact, I don't have any strings. See that? I don't have any strings. I'm going to have basically the equivalent of text boxes in here. So I don't need this. So I'm going to just say decimal subtotal equals 0.0m. Decimal discount percent. That's going to be equal to 0.0m. Decimal discount amount. That's going to be equal to 0.0m. And finally, total. And that's going to be a decimal as well. Again, I'm putting 0 or 0.00. It doesn't matter. I just like to be consistent. That's all. All right. Again, I'm going to push these over a little bit so that they're all lined up. All right. So now I've got these out of the way, so I can get rid of these. In fact, I don't even have calculate clear. I don't need those. I don't know why I put those in there. So I don't need those comments anymore. All right, so I'm going to get rid of my comments. And I'm going to come in here and say, write, enter the subtotal. All right, now remember, if I do this, if I come in and say subtotal, this is going to give me an error. Subtotal equals, and if I just try to say here read line, it's going to give me an error. And it's giving me an error, and these are things that should hopefully start making sense to you now, because what goes into read line is a string. And I'm trying to take a string value and assign it into something that is decimal. So how do I get around that? Again, I say convert dot to decimal. And then I put the read line in there. All right? So that should do that. Okay, so that's first one. Now, in here, remember, this program that you're looking at on your screen right now, this is what's called an event-driven program. In other words, hopefully what I'm about to say you'd agree with. I start running the program. So let's pretend there's nothing in any of these boxes. All right? If I don't press a button, what's going to happen? And the answer is not a doggone thing. All right? Because this program is being controlled by the event of you clicking this button or this button. All right? When you write a console program, there's no buttons. And the reason I'm telling you that is we have to literally ask, we have to literally ask in here, what is the discount percent? We don't have to ask the amount or the total. Those we're calculating, but we have to ask the percent, or we could have hard-coded it in if we wanted to do that. I don't want to do that because then I always have the same percentage. So let me close this. All right, I'll save that. All right. The other thing too, as you know, is now by now, or hopefully you know, is when I run this. All right, we just did the invoice tax console. I'm going to right mouse click on the project name and choose set as startup project. So it'll start the way that it should. So now I want to come in here and say write. Please enter discount percent. And again, I'm going to just steal this line here because it'll be the same thing except the variable name has changed. So this will say now discount percent equals this. So now I've got my two inputs. So now I can figure out my outputs. So discount amount is going to be equal to what? My subtotal times my discount percent. Okay, so I've got that. And then my total is going to be equal to my my subtotal minus my discount amount. So literally what we've kind of done here is made a real simple calculator. All right, so now we've got that. So what's left? All right, well, what's left is to write all this stuff out. All right, and I showed it to you yesterday where I created a string variable in here called output, but let's just do one for each line. So in other words, I'm going to come in here and say write line. And let's clear the console first so it looks a little nicer when we print out our output. All right, so I'm going to put a write line here that says subtotal. And then a plus sign means concatenate right here or glue together. And I'm going to say subtotal dot toString. Now I can convert this to decimal because I've already done all my calculations. And I can do another write line. And this will be our discount percent. And I can say plus discount percent toString. Now this time I do not want to make that a percentage. I'm sorry, a currency rather, the C. I want a P for percent. And again, I could line this stuff up pretty if I wanted to. I don't care. So that this will be a C. This will be a C. And now I'm going to write down discount amount. All right, and this will be final total. All right, isn't that what I called it? No, just total, I'm sorry. Well, we can say final total, we'll just put the word total there. That's total, dot toString. All right, so again, I just like to be able to see everything that I'm doing, so I'm going to push that over. And that'll work just fine. Now, to test this, before I run it, I'm going to do a file save all, but I'm going to use their values. So I'm going to put in 225, and I'm going to put in 10%, which remember is 0.1 when I input it. And I should get these values then when I output it. So 225 at 10%. So I'm going to try that right now. So file, save all, I think I already did, but that's not going to hurt anything. All right, and come down here and run it. Says there were errors. Good. Actually, good thing. So I screwed something up. So let's see what I screwed up. Says a parenthesis is expected. Let's find out where that is. Oh, there's the beginning paren, but I never put in an ending one. That fixed that. All right, that was a syntax error. It was an error in the rules of the language. So let me try it again. And you'll notice, I'll make this bigger so you can all see it. Please enter the subtotal. It was 225. Please enter the discount percent. It was 10%, which was 0.1. Oh, and it did work, but remember, for some reason, sometimes I have to put in the read line statement. So let me put in that. Okay, usually it's like the first time you run it, it's got to do that for whatever reason. So try it again. Subtotal was 225. Discount amount was 0.1. And there we have it. So let's look at that. And let's look at this. Make this nice and small. Come on. There you go. 225, 10.0. I could have formatted it so it has 1 decimal instead of 2. That's no big thing. And 2250, 20250. In fact, since I told you that, let me show you, because I believe this will work just fine. If I only wanted that to say 10.0 instead of 10.00, I believe what I'd do here is I'd say P1. I think it'll take that. I'm going to find out right now. So I'm saved it, and let's run it again. Again, 225.1, and now it's 10.0, so it looks just like what was in the book. So to summarize this part, the program is not long. It's 30 lines. And out of those 30 lines, 2 of them are the using statements. We've got probably 5 or 6 blank lines. This is the stuff that gets put in for us. So the code that we have starts really on line 10. All right, so it's about 20 lines. In those 20 lines, and let me move this down, my question to you before we take a break is this. Is there anything in any of these lines of code that are now showing on the screen that does not make sense to any of you? Is there anything? All right, and as always, I'm going to save this and I'm going to put it out there for you like I've been doing. But when I do that, if you look at it later or something doesn't work, please feel free to email me and let me know. I'll be happy to work with you. Or if you say, hey, I think you did this wrong, that's fine. This morning, John, one of the reasons that you got in here is because Michael gave me a couple tips on Microsoft Teams. I'm not too proud to take help from anybody and everybody. All right. And just to show you what I mean real quick, and that is my wife has an iPad. I never use it. I don't like iPads. I don't know why, but I don't like them. And she asked me to do something and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I said, I don't know how to do this. My wife said, she was on the phone. So she said, I'll help you in a minute. So my granddaughter, who's 4, came over and showed me how to do it. All right. Now, I could have been embarrassed. I thought it was great that she knew how to do it. And now I know how. So big deal. All right. So last thing that we'll do then before the break is, and we don't have to do it now, but I'm going to anyway. And that is, let's see. We've got our invoice total console. So that's in there. I'm going to go to my solution again. I'm going to right mouse click on it. I'm going to click add new project. You've seen this now many times. I'm going to type in here Windows form. I'm going to make sure it's a Windows Form App.NET framework, C#. I'm going to call this one, since the other one was Invoice Total Console, this will be Invoice Total GUI. And I'm going to hit enter, and there it is. All right. Now, so what I'm going to do after the break is try to make it look just like this. All right. Before we break, just so we don't have to waste a lot of time, I'll come in here. I'll give it a better color. Again, you don't have to do that, but I'll give it a better color just so it's a little easier for us to see. I haven't used purple yet, so there's a nice purple. All right. I'm going to come over to my toolbox here, and I'm going to set up my label. And just to show you this, I'm going to grab just one label. I'm going to grab just one text box. And I'm going to grab just one button right now. Why did I do that? So I can highlight all of them and just show you that I can come in and set the font for everything at one time. So 16, bold, and Arial, click OK. All right. So it hasn't changed the sizes, but that's okay. All right. So I'm very quickly, and I mean this, very quickly going to attempt to build my interface, and then we'll take our break. All right. So I'm going to make it about the size that it was on the screen. So this, of course, will have to be bigger. And I will add the clear. I just like having that in there. So I will have my 3 buttons as we've been doing. All right. I'm going to have my label here. I'm going to go to the auto size property and set that to false by double clicking on it. All right. I'm going to go over and move this nice and close. And then finally, I'm going to go in and I'm going to set the text align. And I'm going to set that to, I like it this way. You may or may not. Try to move that over a bit. Well, I can just double click it. So I want it to be middle right. All right. So I've now got that. This I just want to make wider. All right. And now I don't think that it'll let me take this and copy like that. Maybe it does, but I don't like doing it like that anyway. So paste, paste, up a tad, and paste. Oops, didn't want to do that. Did a Control Z to back out my change. And here, copy, paste, paste, paste. And remember, on here, these two fields that are here, these two are both going to be read-only, so I might as well make them read-only right now. All right. I have not changed my names on this stuff yet. I will do that in just a second. Doesn't look terrible, doesn't look fantastic. I want to move these down just a little bit, move them over a little. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now I've got the interface basically looking the way I want. Now, it says on here, what, subtotal discount, percent discount amount, so probably, these should be probably a little bit wider than they are. All right, so now they are. That should cover everything. So I'm going to highlight everything that's here, right mouse click, and lock my interface into place. All right, and I'll tell you what, you can watch me if you want, but I'm going to give you a break right now because it's about 10:15. Let's come back, it's 10:16, just 10:17. All right, so let's come back at 10:27, and in that time, because you don't have to watch me do this, I'm going to rename these and put in the associated text, and I'm going to rename these, and I'm going to rename these and put in the text. So that'll take me a couple minutes. So let's come back and we'll reconvene at 10:27. See you then. What do these say again? Subtotal discount percent. Still not wide enough. Wait. All right, I have, during your break, I've been refining this, and I already put in the exit code because it's the exact same code that I gave you before. It's the exact same code I put in for virtually all the programs that I do. All right. And now clear, and you should by now be familiar with the fact that clear, 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 put the focus there. So 5 lines of code. So txt, and they are what again? Subtotal dot text equals the empty string, txt discount percent. Oops, I don't know what I did there, but something. Txt discount percent dot text equals double quote txt discount amount dot text equals double quote and txt total dot text equals double quote finally txt subtotal dot focus. All right, and again, just line these up. Do a file, save all, run the program. I've already set up a few things during the break. I made it centered. I set it up so my cancel button and my accept button and the tab border. All right. So I'm just going to put in garbage in here and in here. Click clear. It cleared, and there's my cursor. Try my exit, say no. Click exit and say yes. So all that stuff is working. So again, the only thing that I have to do in here is this. Now I want to do something before we do that. That is, I want to bring back from the console, I want to bring back this file that has our code in it. I'm not going to take any of it. All right, I'm not going to take any of it, but there's a reason I'm doing that. Just give me a second and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to come in here now, and we've now got this. We'll put an amount here as well. I think in there is, I think they just gave it a standard discount percent. I don't remember. They did. They just said 10%. I don't like that. So I made it a little more versatile. Okay. So here we're going to come in and we are going to say subtotal, in fact, decimal, subtotal equals txt, oh, we got to convert it, convert dot to decimal, txt subtotal dot text, that's our first one, decimal discount percent equals another convert to decimal, I should say, to decimal, and this will be txt discount percent dot text. That's kind of running off the screen, and I want you to be able to see all of it, so I'm just going to make it a bit smaller. All right, and let's line these up. Now we can do our other two variables. All right, you already know what those are. So decimal discount amount, that is equal to our subtotal times our discount percent. Okay. And then finally, our total, which is going to be equal to our subtotal minus our discount amount. All right, again, and you don't have to do this, but I'm doing it anyway, so. Finally, one last thing we have to do, now that we've got these amounts, all right, remember, these are our two amounts that are both read-only, so we can format them. These are not read-only, so we will not format them. just in case somebody decides to change one of these two without clicking the clear button first. Oops, get back, sorry, there it is. Okay. So, txt discount amount.text equals discount amount dot toString, and we'll format to be currency. And our txt discount amount now. Oh, it's not that. It's, what is it? That's our total. So txt total dot text equals total dot toString, same kind of way. So that's good. Far as I know now, I could be wrong, but I'm going to do a file save all, and it should be done. Should be. So let's check. Again, I will use the same numbers that we used before, those being, I will come in here and put in 225. I will come in here and put in 0.1. So again, this should be 2250, and this should be 20250 if we did it right. And it looks like we did. So again, I can come back in, as I showed you before, the clear works, that works. I can come back in here if I want, and I can center this stuff, which is one thing I forgot to do. So our text align. Now that's centered. Just double check and make sure. You can see that it's centered. So when you test again, like 1,000 at 25%, so the discount amount, once I hit enter, and I'm not going to click the button this time, I'm going to try using my accept and clear button, or my accept button and my cancel button things. So when I hit enter, this should say discount amount should be $250. That should be $750. There's my mouse cursor. So if I'm just going to hit enter, 250 and 750, so that worked. Let's make sure that we can clear, all right, and we can clear by hitting the escape key, and that works. Now, I do want to mention this because this goes back to a question that John had asked before, and that is, you'll notice on here, we've got the underscores, but when we run it, they're not showing. Well, what the heck is wrong with that? And I'm going to put these back in, so I'll put in 200 again, and let's just say 10%, all right? And I want to calculate, it actually is there, so I'm going to hold down here, and I'm going to do an Alt, I think it's Alt C, and notice it worked. But for some weird, quirky reason, the way that they've got it set up, the way that Microsoft set up this project or product, is it works here, it shows here, and it works here, but it doesn't show when you run it. Again, to clear it, I used L, so I'm going to do an Alt L, and you'll notice that works. So they all work. All right, and the last thing I wanted to show you on this, all right, the last thing that I wanted to show you is this. That's why I brought this back. So this is all of our text in here. All right, now I'm going to do something. You may not understand it, but you will in a second. I'm going to grab all of, that's all the text that I have. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to bring up an editor, and I'm going to just throw it into that editor. And again, like I said, there's a reason that I'm doing this, not to waste, not to waste my time or your time, but I want to do this. All right. And again, I don't care about it being pretty or whatever. So I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to make this a lot smaller because I want to be able to see as much of both of these as possible. All right. So what I'm trying to show you here, and I'm not trying to waste my time or your time, but this right here is the console. This right here, oh, they're both console. Okay, bring that one back up then. There we go. All right, so this is the GUI, and this is the console. And I'm trying to show you that there are a lot of things that are alike between these. Decimal subtotal, all right? And I really did not have to declare these up here. I could take this line of code and I could put it in here. I could remove all these lines And just to show you, I could remove all these, not give them beginning amounts, and put in here the word decimal, and it would have still worked. And here, and here, and here. And that would have worked. And now you're really starting to see this line is almost the same as this line, except in what's in the parentheses. This is called an argument or a parameter. So the parameter or argument when we have a GUI program is the name of the control and the property. When we have a console program, the name of the argument is the method, the routine that's going to read that in. But other than that, they're both decimal subtotal equal convert dot to decimal. All right. Same with this one. And then we get down to here. And notice these are exactly the same. All right. And of course, it'll look different because I'm writing it out to the console as opposed to putting it or having it out onto my GUI. The reason I did that was not to waste my time, not to waste your time. But what I wanted to tell you is, notice there's a heck of a lot of similarity here. All right. Why? Because the logic is the same whether you are building a console application or a GUI application. There are some instructors that I know who teach this course. All right. And I'm not saying at Rankin, but I know people at other colleges that teach this course, and they spend the first few weeks, they don't even show people GUI programs. Every single thing that they do is done on the console, because then they're just teaching you code. That's all you see. All right. And that may or may not be a better idea than the way I'm doing it. I'm just trying to follow what's in the book. All right. So again, I will save these. In fact, I'll do it momentarily. So I'm going to do a file save all here. And now I should be able to close this and close this, come into here, just double check. Yes. And again, I don't need these things in gray, so I will remove them. I can leave them. They aren't hurting anything. All right. So now I should be able to close this and this. All right. So my whole thing right now, it's under payroll C#. It's getting bigger. So that's why another reason we have to go in and start talking about GitHub. All right. But somewhere in here is the folder. Payroll, there it is. And it's not even a meg yet. Send to, there it is. So I will remember by the end of class to grab that particular folder and I will email it to all of you. So if you had any problems or if there's anything you want to double check or whatever, you'll be able to do that. Now I'm going to close this out for now at least, and we're going to jump into chapter 3 of our text. All right, so let's see, where are we here? Here we go. So chapter 3 is how to code and test a Windows Forms application. So they're assuming in the last chapter you learned how to make a form, but we haven't really talked about testing it yet. Well, we've already tested it. Now, what I am going to do in here is I am going to go over this stuff like this introduction to coding, and I am going to talk about object-oriented, but not enough. What's the old saying? I want to give you enough to wet your whistle to make you think about it, but I don't want to overwhelm you with details, is what I'm saying. All right? And I'm not even going to run through the PowerPoints here because I looked at them and they're so close to what's in the book here. I don't think that you're missing anything with that. So let's just jump into this. Now, what I want you to understand, and it may make sense to you, it may not, and there's some of you in this class who took the class with me last semester. So some of the stuff I'm going to say for the next 5 minutes will be repetitive. You've heard it already. But imagine for a second that out on Parr Road, you may or may not have seen that, but there is a house right across from where you turn in on Parr Road and you go by the big carpenter's building. Well, and let's put it this way. If you've never been to Rankin or seen it, you don't know what I'm talking about. But let's do it this way. Let's pretend there's a vacant lot that's got about 1,000 acres on it. So there's 1,000 acres of land, and someone decides that they're going to go in and they're going to build houses on it. We're just going to assume that they're, with the roads and the sewer and everything else, they have room. They're going to put in, let's just say, 200 houses. All right. And those 200 houses, they have an architect come in, and the architect draws up 5 different house plans. There'll be a couple of them that are 2 stories, a couple of them that are ranches, and maybe a raised ranch. Those different house plans are going to be used to create different houses. Those house plans, which are kind of blueprints, they are blueprints of what a house will look like, are what are known in computer terminology as that's a class. So for instance, I could make a class and call it person. All right. And then I could make person objects. So I could make a Jeff object, I could make a John object, I could make a Michael object, I could make a Jeremiah object, etc. The reason I'm telling you that is that's what they're talking about here. Now, you may or may not realize it, but you know what? You've been using objects already, because this text box is a text box object. It's part of the text box class. It's an object of the text box class. So is this one. So is this one. So is this one. Each of these are label objects, and each one of them are part of the label class. And as you can guess, these are 2 button objects, and they're both part of the button class. So as it says, an object is a self-contained unit that combines data and code. Guess what? You know that. You know that the form, which is another object, it's got the GUI and it's got the code. All right. So it's got the code and it's got the data. All right. So it says 2 examples that you've worked with already are forms and these other controls. So an object is what's called an instance of a class. Just like if our builder came in and built those 200 houses, and let's just say they used architectural plan 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. Then they repeated it again and again. Then each one of those architectural plans would be a blueprint or a class, and each house that would be built would be a house object. Now you could have 2 houses that were built from the same plan or the same class, and they could look different. The color could be different. All right. Just that's probably the best example. The color of the door could be different. The type of windows they put in could be different, etc. But they're both the same type. They're both instantiated, which is what it's called. You're instancing or creating an instantiation, an instance of a class of the same one. And that's what they're talking about in here. Now, do you have to worry about that? Not until we're about halfway into the course. They mention it now because they want you to know that really C# is what's called an object-oriented programming language, or an OOP language, OOP. And they're just letting you know that. All right. Now, this is the 225 in here is it's the text, right? It's the text property. When we click the calculate button, we are calling the calculate click method, and we're calling it based off of the click event. So that's what they're talking about right here. Now that might make sense and it might not make a lot of sense. It'll make much more sense when we get to chapters 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, because those chapters are on object-oriented programming. All right, so you can just put that away in the back of your head someplace if you want to. All right, so how to refer to this stuff? Well, you already know this. The name of the control dot the name of the property. All right, you've already done this. All right, Okay. They give you some shortcuts and some other stuff in here. All right. You can read that on your own. What they're basically saying is the Intellisense is set up, and you've already seen that when I put in a field, a text box, and I started putting it in, and it said, oh, you want the dot text, etc. So you can read that at your leisure. All right. How an application responds to events? Well, notice the first sentence, because that's the key one. Windows Forms applications are event-driven, which means after you write your program, and we're talking about a Windows Form application, so a GUI. After you write the GUI, all right, and you get done and you run the program, it does nothing until you interact with some kind of a control that has event code associated with it. So it says it works by responding to events. So C#, like Java, like JavaScript, are all known as being event-driven programming languages. So as it says there, to respond to an event, you code what's called an event handler. Guess what? You know what those are. You've had things like btn calculate _ click. That's the click event handler. All right. It says when you do that, Visual Studio generates a statement. I think they even show it on here, or don't they? No, they don't. So yeah, here, this line right here, and hopefully you can see this. I'm going back and forth with the mouse. The one that says this dot button click or btn exit dot click, etc. That's the kind of line of code you'd find in that designer file that I told you not to monkey with. Why? Because when you write something and you save it, that gets written for you by the system so that it knows that it needs to correlate that particular button with that particular click event. All right. Some of the common events are shown right there. You can take a look at them. We've only worked with the click. Double click if you wanted to, you could work with that. Enter and leave often are used with the mouse. So when the mouse enters a field, when you put your cursor in a field and when you leave a field. The form events, I already mentioned, load to you. When a form is loaded into memory. Then there's closing and there's closed. Closing means that you're about to close the form, but it is still open. This would be a time if you wanted to do something special at the end or ask the user something. Are you sure you want to close this form? All right. Closed means it has closed. There's very little you can do after that. All right, because basically it's done. And again, to connect the event handler to an event, Visual Studio automatically generates the statement. So this thing, again, that's wiring up the event. That's the way it's referred to. All right. It says how to add code to a form. Guess what? You know how to do that. You double click on the control. But as I mentioned to you from day one in here, when you do that, you want to make sure you have renamed the button what you want it to be. Because if you don't, it'll give it that default name _ click. And not every control, when you double click a button, it gives you the name of that button _ click, because click is the default event for a button. You may or may not have noticed when I double clicked on the form, it came up with the name of the form _ load, because load is the default event for a form. So different controls have different default events. You get the default event when you double click on the control you want to add code to. All right. It says how Intellisense helps. Well, that's what I've been trying to show you. Some people hate Intellisense. There is a way, I don't remember what it is because I don't do it, but there is a way you can go in, I think, through your tools and you can turn Intellisense off. I mean, to me, it's a great learning tool. Plus, quite often it results in you having to type in less code and just hitting the tab key more often. But if that bugs the heck out of you, it might even say it in here. I don't know, but there is a way that you can turn it off. All right. So those event handlers, I don't think we have to go through this because I showed them to you. Now, they did it differently. They did theirs based on this, which was they used an if statement in here. So I guess I can go through this. It'll probably help. So the key thing to understand about this code that's right here, stuff that I'm trying to put into grade that's not letting me, but that's that stuff there, is either this statement is going to run, or this statement is going to run, or this statement is going to run, or none of them are going to run. All right? Why do I mean none of them? Well, typically, if you're going to have an if and then an else if and then an else if, you typically put an else on the end. You don't have to, but what it's saying is, if we put a subtotal in our program that we just looked at, the one we just wrote, and if the subtotal is greater than 5,000 or 500, I should say, the percentage is 20%. If it's $250 to $499.99, it's 15%. If it's $100 to $249.99, it's 10%. Otherwise, it's zero. There is none. Now, that might make sense to you. That might not make sense to you. So I'm going to kind of do this a little bit differently. And that is, I'm going to pretend that I'm writing a console program here, but I don't want to take all that time to do that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to say int grade. And I'm just going to initialize it to 0. Remember, an int is a whole number, an integer. Then I'm going to say write, enter your grade. And I'm going to say that it has to be between 0 and 100. Then I'm going to say grade equals convert dot to int, and with int you got to put a 32 in there. We'll go over that shortly, but then we'll put in here read line. So this is a console program that I'm writing. All right. So why am I doing this? Why am I doing? I want to tell you this. I want to show you this. I want to say if the grade we just entered is less than 0, or the grade we entered is greater than 100, we don't want to accept it. All right. So in other words, we want to do this. I'm going to copy this stuff. And I'm going to put in here out of range. Ding, ding, ding. Please enter your grade. So the way that this works, and I'll tab these over, but the way this is going to work is it's going to give a message when I run this. It says enter your grade 0 to 100. Then we enter it. If we enter something that's numeric, that should be int, not in. If we enter a number, but let's say that we come in here for whatever reason, we type in -26. That's not legal. That is a number that is less than 0. So if we enter -26 in, it's going to write on the screen, out of range, please enter your grade, and it'll ask them to enter a different grade. So they do it again, and they want to put in, you got a 26. They didn't mean to put in the minus, but they fat finger and they put 266 in. This symbol right here, which is called a pipe sign, it's shift, and then right up above the enter key, that means or. That means if either this or this. So now we put in 266, that is greater than 100. So again, it's going to do this. All right, and I'm hoping that what I just said to you makes sense. Now, the problem is, okay, we run the program. Right here, it asks us to put in a grade. Like I said, we put in -26. It comes in and it says, oh, out of range. Tell you to do it again. But I still put in a bad number. Now it's going to accept the bad number. And if is what I call a one-time shot. In other words, you get one chance to make it right. what you're going to see in an upcoming chapter is if I change the word if to the word while, it'll keep me inside of there until I put in a grade that is between 0 and 100. Now that's going ahead, and I don't want to confuse you too much. All right. But what I want to show you is this. I'm going to say if grade is greater than or equal to 90, we're going to make another variable in here. We're going to call this int letter, not int, string LG for letter grade, and we'll set that equal to nothing. So if your grade was greater than or equal to 90, then your letter grade is equal to A. Else if, now let me just do some copying here because it'll make it go a lot faster. It's greater than or equal to 80, it's going to be a B. Grab all that. Else if it's greater than or equal to 70, it's going to be a C. Else if it's greater than or equal to 60, it's going to be a D. Now I'm just going to put here else, and it's an F. Now, I didn't do this right here to waste my time or to waste your time. But if you can understand what's going on here, you're well on your way to being able to understand any of this stuff. So what do I mean here? Well, let's suppose we did put the word while in here. That's going to assure that once we get down to here, we've got a letter grade between 0 and 100. So let's take a few examples. So let's say we put in an 87. All right. Is 87 greater than or equal to 90? No. So that line is skipped. Is 87 greater than or equal to 80? Yes. So it's going to set the letter grade equal to B, and it's going to skip all of this. All right. Let's do it again. Say the next person got a 97. All right. Is 97 greater than or equal to 90? Yes. So we're going to set their letter grade to A, and we're going to skip all of this. All right. You can see where I'm going here. So let's say the next person got a 44. Is that greater than or equal to 90? No. Is it greater than or equal to 80? No. Is it greater than or equal to 70? No. Is it greater than or equal to 60? No. So it's going to hit this. It's going to give them an F. All right. And hopefully by me going through that the way I just did, it made at least a little bit of sense to you. Now, if it didn't, don't let that worry you. We're going to be going over a ton of examples like this throughout the semester. All right. But I just wanted to introduce that to you just so you can kind of get some kind of an idea of the way they did this. Now, what you'll notice is I used up here this, which means or. That means that if this is true or this is true. All right. I didn't use the other one, which is 2 ampersands, which is and, because you can't have a grade that is both less than 0 and greater than 100. That doesn't make any sense. There's no number that I know of that exists. But it could be one or the other. So when you put in 2 pipe signs, it's or. If you put in 2 ampersands, it's and. All right. And again, you don't have to worry right now about remembering that. All right. All right. Syntax errors. There's 3 types of errors that you can get when you run a program. Just so you know, there are 3 types of errors that you can get when you run a program. So let me come back to here. Move this down. The easiest kind to fix are syntax errors. And that's an error in the rules of the language. You've already seen me make some of those. That's things like forgetting a semicolon. You saw that earlier, I spelled a word wrong. Those syntax errors are found before you even run the program. That's when that arrow window appears on the bottom of your screen. All right, so that's the first kind. Second type are what are called runtime errors. And these appear when you run the program. but not before. For instance, had I come in here and done this, int x equal 10, int y equals 0, int z equals x divided by y. Now, if you tried dividing by 0, which gives you infinity, if you did that in a JavaScript program, you'd get the number infinity. Here, the program would break. You'd get an error message, and it would be a runtime error. The system doesn't know until it tries to actually do the operation that what you're trying to do is illegal. So again, syntax errors appear right away because they're errors in the rules of the language. Runtime errors don't appear until you run the program. The last type is the hardest because those are logic errors. And that's an error you made. And I don't mean you personally, but what if I did this? Let's make this 5. All right. And I wanted to say, let z equals x plus 5. All right. But instead of plus, I accidentally put minus. So now instead of z being equal to 15, it's equal to 5. That's an error in my own logic. Those are and when I say error you made, they're typically the hardest ones to find. And again, if you took classes with me last semester, you may have already heard me say this quick little story that I had a young lady who came up to me one day in class and said, "Can you come here, Mr. Scott? I can't figure out what the problem is." And she had done something like this. It wasn't this, but it was along those lines. And I noticed it right away, but I didn't say anything. I said, "Oh, let me look." And I gave it a couple seconds. I said, "Oh, you put the wrong sign here. Didn't you mean to do this?" "Oh, yeah. You know what? I didn't do that." Well, of course she did. All right. We all do it. We all make logic errors, not only in programming, but in life. All right. So enough of that sermon. Let's just jump back in. So this will show you, this is your error window down here, and it'll show you the errors. They call it the error list window. Okay, whatever. All right. How to code with a readable style. Well, I've tried to show you that a little bit in the code that I wrote for you. In other words, when you look here as an example, I'm going to just to show you this. Delete. That'll work. I believe there's a way that you can go in through your options and you can turn off all the automatic formatting, etc. in there, and you could do that. Why you'd want to do that is way beyond me. All right, but you could. In fact, now that I notice in here, why do I have 2 ifs? That's if, else if, else if. Sorry. All right. So when they're talking about formatting, you don't want it to look like that. You want it to look something like this. All right, again, I apologize for having the word if there twice. Why? Just because this is easier to read. I do want you to understand, though, that when you compile the program, I'm not going to go back and make this where it's, basically, I remove all the white spaces up. But that's what the compiler does. It gets rid of your white space. You don't have to worry about it because it's being done for you automatically. All right. Comments, we've talked about comments already. Notice in here, they went a little nuts. You can do that if you want to. All I've said to people is, hey, while you're here at Rankin, all right, whether you're here in person or whether you're here online like you guys or whatever, come up with your own style, but stick to it. Even a bad style is better than no style at all. So come up with your style. You may go to work for a company and they may give you a style manual and they may say, hey, the way we code here is like this. They're not going to ask you if that's okay. They're just going to expect you to do it that way. So there's multi-line comments, there's single line comments. There's even another kind that you can use that I'm not going to talk about right now. All right, it's an XML comment that we'll talk about at another time. The text editor toolbar. Again, there's that, to add the comments, there I think it is, add comments or remove comments where you can highlight a bunch of stuff together. All right. It is that one there, I guess. Okay. These code snippets, Microsoft provides pre-written code for you. Rather than calling them code snippets, I refer to them basically as templates, because there's a way that you can have them put code in for you. Guess what? I'm not going to show you that. I don't like these. I want to write my own code. All right. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said, I don't do it much, not anymore. I don't do it now at all anymore because of COVID. But pre-COVID, I was a frustrated karaoke singer. And I was telling this friend of mine that when I karaoke, that I don't like there to be any background singers. Why? Because if I screw up, then it's all on me. Whereas if they're background singers and if the song sounds funky, oh, you did it bad. No, I did it fine. The background singers stunk. They might have been at a different key that I was in, etc. Well, the same thing here. I don't want somebody to put in code for me, because if I'm working for a company and I use a snippet and I use it wrong, it's still my fault. So that's all I'll say about snippets, period. All right, then they talk about refactoring code. When you refactor code, there's a lot of ways that you can refactor, just so you know. I mean, one way is, now here they're coming in here and they're doing a rename. So you decide you want to rename a variable. All right, and it says here, do you want to rename it in comments, in any string it might happen to be in, etc., and you want to preview it. And typically you'll have all of them checked. But you can refactor. That is one way of refactoring. So it says it's the process of revising and restructuring existing code. All right, so you can have a read on that by yourselves. Running, testing, and debugging a project, guess what? We've done it. All right, nothing new there. Now, I do want to mention something, and you've seen this, you've seen these errors. You may or may not have noticed this stuff when you're running your program. And notice it says diagnostic tools, and that's exactly what it is. It's stuff that you're not going to monkey with, but it's letting you know how much memory you're using, and there's a bunch of other stuff that you can add. Plus in here, these are not errors. All right, this is what's called a locals window. We're going to hit on this in a later chapter in the book. You will see this in a later chapter in the book. All right, and in that locals window, you can put what are called watches on variables. So as your program's running, you can see how the values of your variables are changing. We'll talk about that later. If I said more than that, it would probably start to confuse you. All right. How to debug runtime errors. A lot of that has to do with setting those breakpoints like I told you. This is called the gutter area, this gray area. And if I click in there, it'll put a cyan colored, brownish red colored dot there. And the program will stop right when it gets to that line, because that's called a breakpoint. Then I can go back in here and I can take a look at the values if I want to do so. All right, again, we're going to hit on that in a later chapter. And that's pretty much everything. Now, last thing is I don't have it open anymore, and I thought I did. Just to double check, and there's 40 slides. You're going to see me go through this. It's 11:11. I guarantee you I'll be done before 11:15. This is the one that I built for you, using both console app and GUI app. We talked about objects, properties, methods. You know what those are now. All right. I talked to you about the Intellisense. We talked about how you can, in code, you can be changing properties. We talked about we didn't, but the dot operator. So it's the name of the control dot, the name of, whatever it is you want to change. We talked about how to wire these things up and how this is in your designer file. We talked about some of the common control events, some of the common form events. We not only talked about the click event, but I showed you the click event. All right. This is the code completion that we talked about, the Intellisense. We talked about what event handlers are. We talked about the fact that C# is what's known as an event-driven programming language. These were some of the rules as far as prettying stuff up, etc. One of the key ones is this third one. Each statement must end with a semicolon. You already seen what happens when you don't. All right, we talked about errors in your error list window here. I went back and showed you my own example of using an if and an else if. This is their example of how you can write something and it can look really poor. You know, it's the same kind of thing I did for you. I mentioned you should use indentation and spaces when you need to, blank lines when you need to. All right, it says as you enter code, Visual Studio adjusts the formatting by default. You've seen that already. We talked about multi-line comments. We talked about single-line comments, how to create comments, how you can automatically have your comments put in for you by highlighting and then choosing that option. I showed you the other day, expand and collapse. Every routine that you write will have a minus sign next to it. If you click the minus sign, it'll disappear. The whole routine will disappear from view, except for the first line, and then the minus sign will become a plus sign. If you click it again, it'll expand it. All right. So I don't know if they show an example of that. No. All right. I talked about code snippets and the fact that I don't use those. Talked a little bit about refactoring and renaming stuff. I mentioned to you what this diagnostic tools area was. You already know how to test a project, all right? And you know what happens when it goes into break mode, either because you get an error or because you put in a breakpoint. So that's it, all right? Now, I quickly went over chapter 3, all right? I want to do one more thing, but I want to give you a break first because we've been going for quite a while. So I'm going to give you a 10-minute break. I'd like you to come back, please, at 11:25. It's just about 11:15. So come back at 11:25, and I quickly want to go over what we're going to be doing next week on Monday. All right, so take your break if you would for 10 minutes, and I'll be back with you at 11:25. Break should start now. I've got to step out for a couple minutes. I'll be back well before your break is over. All right, I am back, and I want to let you know what we're going to be doing next week. All right, so this was this week. I'm not going to say week 1 because week 1 was only 3 days, but we've now gone over chapter 1, we've gone over chapter 2, and we've gone over chapter 3. All right, my hope is, I don't know for sure, but my hope is by now you've all had a chance to set up a Git account and a GitHub account. All right. If you set up that GitHub account, and again, I think this will work fine even if you haven't. I think I showed this yesterday, but I want to show it again anyway. That if you go out to github.com/jpscottrankin, okay, we make this nice and big so you can see it. So if you go out to there, and you don't need the HTTPS, you can put it in, but you don't have to. But if you go out to there, github.com/jpsrankin, in fact, to be sure, I'm going to grab this, oops, or try to, copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to close the one I've got open up a new one, and there's just github.com/jpscottrankin, and there we are at the same place. So if you go out there, this is what you should find. It may not look exactly like this to you, and that's okay. But what you will want to do then when you go out there to that is click where it says repositories, because all of my repos, which is what repository is short for, all of my repos are public. I just throw it all out there so anybody can take a look at it, okay? You should be able to find right near the top this one. AWD1100 Spring, etc. This has got in there, just so you can see it, because I've already got it opened up over here. This has got in it, and I showed this the other day, but I'm saying it again anyway. It does not have the syllabus in it. You get to the syllabus by going out to Inside Rankin. All right, but it has this in there. So it has all of your homework files, all of your lab files, all of your slides, all of the download stuff, and all of your written tests. All right. We'll talk about the hands-on tests stuff and how you're going to do that next week. Don't worry about that. The point, though, is this. I've had a couple people say to me, hey, there's been no homework in here yet. Yes, there has. Because, again, if you go back to here, you should have the Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3 written tests, and they're due not this Sunday, but a week from this Sunday. So let's take a quick look at what those things are. All right. So I'm opening up first the homework one. You'll notice there is no homework for chapter 1. There is nothing. So you've got that done already. But for chapters 2 and 3, make this bigger. For chapter 2, you're supposed to design a simple form. For chapter 3, you're supposed to code and test the calculate letter grade form. What does that mean? It's the same one. You put in a number grade and you get a letter grade. Now, you don't have to use the names that they say, but I'd like you to make it look the way they're asking it to look. I don't care if you use colors. I don't care if you make it bold or not bold. I don't care if this is centered or not centered. None of that stuff matters to me one way or the other, but you'll follow those steps. You should follow their steps as far as what they tell you to set things to. All right. Now, their names they should be fine. All right. I'd still like you to name your labels, but they don't name their labels. All right. I won't take off if you don't. I still just think it's a good idea if you do. And they tell you how to set up the form. So follow all of these instructions. Then for chapter 3, they give you the code. And they ask you to put that code in and make it work. So those are the 2 homework problems that you're going to have to do for chapters 2 and 3. One for chapter 2, one for chapter 3. That should make sense. Hopefully it does to everybody. If it doesn't, you're going to have to contact me and let me know. So that'll be the homework. Then I'm going to open up on labs. Again, there are no labs for chapter 1. So I'm going to open up the one for chapter 2. Now it says up here, terms to review. This is just the main stuff that was covered in the chapter. Homework and labs. All right. And we're going to go over this, like I said, starting on Monday. But it says here, name your labs, lab 1, lab 2, lab 3. We'll change this around a little bit. But this program says, write a program that converts kilometers to miles. This is actually easier than the payroll program we did. And the formula is in there. So 1 mile equals 1.6 kilometers. So whatever you input for miles, you'll multiply it by 1.6. All right. This one is going to take a little more thought right here. Okay. And then there's these 2. Okay. Now, to try to make this easier for you, and this is going to be just for this first one. I'm planning on basically on Monday, I'm going to do all this. You can watch, you can code along with me, you can just sit and watch and look at the tape later or whatever. That's fine. But you're going to have all of this stuff done, or I will by then. All right. And then finally, in here are also, these are just the PowerPoints I've been showing you. These are all the files from Muroc themselves. But for every chapter, we're going to have a written test. So here's the one for chapter 1, and you'll notice 16 questions, all multiple choice, A through D. Then for chapter 2, we've got more questions. There's 20, A through D. And then finally for chapter 3, some of them are quite long. They might have 30 or 40 questions. All right, for chapter 3, there's 25 questions. Now, I'm going to give you an official, unofficial assignment for the weekend. All right, on Monday, I'm going to go over with you how to do the homework, and I'm going to do it with you. On Monday, I'm going to go over the labs, and I'm going to do them with you. On Monday, we're going to do the 3 written tests as a class, which means that if I come out there and I say, thought I had one open, but I must have closed it. So if I come in there and say on Monday, if I were to come in and say, for example, which of the following is not a .NET programming language? Right here. And Michael goes, it's B, JavaScript. Good. Then you'll all know what it is. But I don't want to sit and read the answers out to you. I want you to take a little bit of time, even if you guess. All right, it's totally fine. All right, so we'll do that on Monday. That's going to probably take up most of the period. What that means is we're not going to be covering anything new on Monday. It's going to be a lot of review and going over the homework. Then, and I'm showing you this because it means I'm changing the syllabus already a little bit, because this said we were supposed to have the pretest. I'm going to move the pretest to Tuesday and the test to Wednesday. All right, so it's going to push everything down. Don't let that worry you. We can probably cover the chapter 4 stuff in a period as opposed to in 2 periods. We've already covered a bunch of it. All right, but I just want you to have an idea of what is going on here. All right, and again, if you have not yet done so, even if you do it right after class today, because I'm going to let you go in about 5 minutes, go out. I've already shown you how to get the stuff that's here. All right, but go out, type in, git download, for example. All right, and it's there, or just go out to here. And again, I might be preaching to the choir here. Maybe everybody's done it, but I know at least one person has contacted me and said that they're totally lost already. So again, you don't need this, but you can put it in. Go out to here. If you go out to here, it's going to bring you right there. Click right here on the download for Windows. It'll save it into your downloads folder. If you're using Chrome, it'll put it down here. Right mouse click on it, choose open when done. It may beep at you a couple times. All right, it may beep at you a couple times, and if it does, just say yes or okay, and then accept every default. And that literally will take you less time than it just took me to explain this. Now, when you get done with that, if you want proof that it works, you can open up any folder. Here's our payroll C# folder. If you double click on it and you want to make sure that it's been loaded, open up the folder and right mouse click. If you see Git GUI here and Git Bash here, you have loaded it correctly. Don't worry about this other stuff. That's for my other classes. And here's open with Visual Studio. Don't worry about that. But you should see Git GUI here, and you should see Git Bash here. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing, and I mentioned this to you the other day, but I'm saying it again, and I always forget how to do this, so I'm going to put it in one more time. And that is, it is what? It is Control-Shift-N. I always forget the N for whatever reason. So come in here, and I'm going to do a Control-Shift-N. Of course, it doesn't work. Control-Alt, because I did Control-Alt. Control-Shift-N. There's an incognito window. So go out to github.com and sign up for a GitHub account. I went through part of this with you the other day. All right, so you'll come in and you'll click sign up. All right, it says let's begin, enter your email. Please use your Rankin email. You can, when you leave here and you want to create another GitHub account, go to it, go for it. But for now, please use your Rankin email. All right, and so you'll put that in there. Now, if I put in jpscott@rankin.edu, it's going to come back and say email is invalid or already taken, because it is. But if I came through here and let's just say my name was B.A. Rubble, so I'm Barney Rubble, B.A. Rubble @gmail.com. All right, it looks at that and it's not giving me an error message, so it's taken it. Yours will be your Rankin email address. So in other words, if I was Barney Rubble, I'd be something like Barney underscore Rubble at inside Rankin.org. And I believe that's how yours are set up. So if you put that in and you click continue, it'll say enter a password. You should enter something, I mentioned this to you the other day, that's hard enough that other people couldn't guess it, but easy enough that either you can remember it or you can write it down or you can save it on your machine somewhere. But I'm going to put in here howdy doody and howdy doody. And every single in there for howdy doody, I put zeros in for the O's. And then I'm going to put in 4 commas, comma, 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 comma. And you'll notice it now says my password is strong. Good. You should have a strong password. Notice, make sure it's at least 15 characters or 8 characters with a number in a lowercase. I click continue again. And it says enter a username. This is the name that it's going to be that's going to be out there on your GitHub account. So I would say B.A. Rubble, like that. And I click continue. It says, would you like to receive product updates? That's totally up to you. I could care less what you put there. I'm going to put in an N for no and click continue again. All right. Now it says verify this account. It says, please solve this puzzle to verify that you are human. So I'm clicking start puzzle. And it says pick the spiral galaxy, which, unless I screwed up, is that one. And it says done. And it says pick it again. And I did it again. And it says now it's recognized that I'm a human. So it says create account. All right, I'm just going to stop there. But if I did click it, it will now create the account. It'll send a verification email to Barney underscore Rubble at insiderankin.org. And then once we do that, then what's going to happen after that is, and after you verify it, then you'll end up going in there and you only should have to do it once. You'll do sign in. And you'll put, for instance, it'll be B.A. Rubble at insiderankin.org. And then whatever I said here, I was howdy doody, comma, 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 comma. Now I didn't go through the finishing process, so it's not going to find this. But once you do that and you sign in, then yours is going to look similar. Come on, Jeffrey. When you go out to github.com, yours is going to look similar to this, except this will probably be empty if you've never put anything in there, and so will this. I need you to do that because on Monday, we are going to create folders and a folder structure that's going to hold our homework, it's going to hold our labs, and it's going to hold our tests. All right? Now, I'm not going to ask if there were any questions on that, but I tried to do it slowly enough that you were able to go through the entire process. So with the process I just showed you, is there anybody in here that has not downloaded Git, has not downloaded GitHub, and after watching this does not understand what you're supposed to do? Is there anybody who meets that criteria? And if you say, well, I don't have it and I'm still screwed up, I don't know, and I don't want to say anything because I'm totally confused, then email me, please. And I'll try to work with you electronically or whatever, one-on-one. So the reason I'm telling you that, and this is, we're just about finished. We're coming to the finished line, so to speak, right now. All right, and the reason I'm telling you this is when we get into Visual Studio and we create a new project, all right, this is what we're going to be doing next week. And I come in here and I'm just going to say Windows Forms. It doesn't matter. All right, we come in here, we make this Windows Forms app for .NET, etc. We do all that, double click on it, and I'm just going to, for this is where it's going to become important. So I'm going to make here, I'm going to make a project name, okay? And that project name, let's just say, we call it labs. Now, what lab? I want it to be something where I'd like it to have, let's say, your last name. So Scott, CH 1-3 lab. All right. And then we're going to set this to our desktop. All right. So we'll set it to our desktop unless you've been setting yours someplace else. And we're going to make a project, a solution in here called labs. Why am I showing you all this? We've done this kind of stuff before. I'm going to show you why right now. And we hit enter. And we now have this. I don't give a rat's butt about this. I don't care. But I want to show you something because you've seen the Solution Explorer, you've seen the Properties window, but if I go to File, if I go to View, there is also and I got to remember what it's called. There is I believe it's the Server Explorer, but find out. But notice what's in there, Git stuff. We're going to set up Git so that you're going to be able to do everything that you have to do from Git right from within here. But in order to be able to do that, you have to have GitHub and Git loaded, or a GitHub account and Git on your machine. So with that said, anything I just said in the last few minutes, is there anything that does not make sense to any of you procedurally? If you come up with something, please feel free to email me. I am going to take for granted that when you come in here on Monday and we start, maybe we'll start and we'll do the written tests first. But after we do those, when we're going to jump right into doing the lab and then the homework, or else the homework and then the lab. All right. And I'm going to assume that you're going to have all this stuff set up. I don't think that's too much for me to assume. So your homework for the weekend is threefold. Number one, make sure you've got Git installed on your machine. Number two, make sure you've got GitHub installed on your machine. Number three, look and try your hand at the written tests for chapters 1, 2, and 3. And if there are no other questions, and it sounds like there were not, have a good weekend. I will talk to you. I will be on at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. Again, have a nice weekend.